I'm sick and tired of charlatans, grifters, snake oil salesmen telling you that they've got the secrets to win fantasy basketball leagues. I've got the secrets to win fantasy basketball leagues. Michael Bolton?
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I actually proposed to Travis Kelce first. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available on all platforms. So, we are, let me exactly tell you here, because I've got the number. We are 56 days away from the beginning of the NBA season. Football season is starting soon, so football drafts are still rolling. And then we're going to see more focus turn to fantasy basketball and fantasy basketball drafts. So what are we doing in this show? Well, if you are a seasoned fantasy basketball participant, thanks for being here. You might want to leave. You probably don't. I'd love if you could stay. But you might not want to be here, because these are things, I tell you 100% now, that I say every year. This is a show that I put out every year. There are repeated things, literally repeated information exactly as what I've done in the past. But that's okay, because A, there are new people. B, refreshers are good. C, it's a video that actually people do enjoy watching for whatever their own individual reason is. Last season when I did this video, I did it in a tips to win your league fashion, but then we also introduced a bunch of other sort of concepts, a bunch of other psychology-based things. The show went, I thought, a little bit long. I really enjoyed doing those things about the psychology. I'm going to do a separate show on psychology, biases, things like that. That probably will get nobody to watch it. Here's the psychology of how to play. I don't think people will like it, but I'm going to separate that out into another show at some point. So this is your tips to dominate your league. Or just say get the best and the most fun experience you can, which honestly, you can win your money. But like, let me tell you this, right, about fantasy basketball. People go, I'm going to win this money. Winning money playing season-long fantasy is actually a pretty bad investment. And the reason why it is, I'm not telling you not to do it, because it's fun and the money makes it more interesting. But you put $100 in and you sit on $100 for 6 months, like that's gone, and then you might win $700. It's not a great investment. You got a 1 in 12 chance of winning that money as it sits there for 6 months. I don't know. It's not. You're not changing your life by winning the money. Usually, you might enter 15 cash leagues and win them all, and it's a nice little chunk of change. Absolutely. But I think one of the things we look at when playing fantasy is winning money is good. Having fun is also great. Engaging with your friends is great. Making new friends and engaging and telling them they're terrible is also great. And all those things should be weighed, and maybe not equally, but proportionally. Enhancing your experience of following the NBA is also a huge part of what fantasy is. Because if you didn't play fantasy, would you know what Jalen Wilson was up to on the Nets? Probably not. You'd be like, who's this bloke? So I think there's all parts of that. So what I want to do in this show is, again, give some tips. Whether you win or not, I don't know. You might, because there's a luck part of all of this stuff that we can't control. But what we can try to do is eliminate avoidable mistakes. And I think that's sort of the main part of where we need to come in and look at this. Because let's talk about the tips we might have on winning these leagues. So what do you need to do? You've got a draft. There will be a draft in your fantasy league. I'm pretty confident in saying that. I don't think there's going to be a, so you say you hate waffles moment with that. I think we're going to be good. What do you need to look at? What is your draft type? Are you in a snake draft? Are you in an auction/salary cap draft? If you're in a salary cap draft, what is the budget? Okay. When is the draft? Figure that shit out. Put it in your calendar. You don't want to miss it. Oh my God, I thought it was yesterday. Sorry, I thought it was tomorrow. That's a better way of doing it. Like, know when it is. How big are your rosters? Because when I'm talking about leagues on here, I am going to default to 12-team leagues with 13 to 14-man rosters. 156 to 168 players. You might have an 8-man league, which rosters 100 players. Bad idea. Not the 8 men. You can do whatever you want with 8 men. Bump your player pool up. You might be in a 30-team league with 350 players rostered. Cool. Do that. That's okay. But you got to know what it is. And what's your scoring settings? 9-cat, 8-cat, 11-cat. By the way, if you ever drop a question in one of my comments or chats or anything like that, say, I'm in an 11-cat league, guess what? I don't know what you're talking about and nobody else does because there is no such thing as standard 11 cats. So unless you play in a standard 8-cat league or a standard 9-cat league, you got to tell us what you're doing because nobody knows. Check what your points setting is. Is it default Yahoo? Is it default ESPN? Is it some other situation that someone's cooked up? If you don't know what it is, you really got no hope of getting the most out of what you can do in your fantasy draft. You can't do it because you've got to know these things. If you don't know what the settings are, how can you possibly manipulate them to your advantage? What's your draft slot? Do you know that in advance? All right, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Should you create some ideas or thoughts based on where it might be? What if I'm picking top 3? What if I'm picking in the middle? What if I'm picking bottom 3? How am I approaching this? These are all the draft prep things that you need to know, or even before you really start prepping for your draft, you need to just have the basics down. You need to know what players have changed teams. Hey man, where are all the Boston guys? Who's not there? Why is Michael Porter now in Brooklyn? Is it for the clout? Is it for the podcasts? He's there though, isn't he? Where's DeAndre Ayton? Why is he in LA? I'd been asleep for 4 months. That's okay. You might have been. Good nap. Shout out to Bears. But you need to be aware of who's moved. Let's talk about some draft strategy stuff now. You need to have an understanding of rankings and ADP, which stands for average draft position, which is the average of where a player has been drafted on the site that you were on. People often confuse what ADP is. ADP is not a ranking. It is not manipulated by someone changing an ADP of a player. It is just how drafts have gone down and where the player is on average drafted. And it can be a confusing number because it might be taking into consideration points leagues and category leagues. It might be taking into consideration dynasty leagues as well. Like for example, right at this moment on Yahoo, for some reason, Jared Vanderbilt has an ADP of 75. He's probably been drafted in one league. Someone taking the piss in one league drafted him at 75. But does that mean that he's a guy to pick at 75? Like, no. But he's sitting at 75. Jason Tatum's ADP is 76 or 72. Why? Because he's getting auto-drafted. And he shouldn't be drafted at all. So just be aware of those things. Rankings, do you trust them? Do you understand where the rankings come from? Do you understand what a straight 9-cat ranking is and how bad it is? Do you understand how to interpret my rankings in Durant? Because if you're just blindly following a list, you don't know what goes into it. You have to know what's behind it to then use the information. Positional scarcity is something we're going to be covering on this show. It's about when you're making draft picks, and you saw it on my Points League mock draft the other day that I needed to fill my second center spot because we used Yahoo's terrible default roster settings. And I got to round 10, and I should have picked a center, and I didn't. And then 4 centers went off the board, and there was nobody left. And I had to grab Santi Aldama. And I was like, yuck, that's terrible. But there was a run of centers. So you've got to know when positions start going. Where do I need to make sure I get a center? If I get a guy that I think is the 100th best player, but I get him at 80 because I just want to lock in a center spot, it's okay. So where do positions run? When do they run out? How do I make sure I fill those spots? Pairings and builds. We're going to do a whole show on this, and you're going to hear my thoughts again, and I think you know what they are. It is incredibly overrated. Incredibly. There is this idea that there is a perfect pairing of players that is absolute garbage. There is not. What there is, in general, is there might be a pairing that you want to avoid with your top 2 picks. If you pick Shea at 3, there is not a single player that you specifically need to get at 22. I could make arguments and build strong teams with 8 different guys in that spot, most likely. It's about making sure you avoid one that doesn't make sense versus finding the perfect. Now, people love a pairing show, and I'm going to do one, and I'm going to tell you how stupid it can be, but I'm going to do it. But don't get sucked into this. Oh, it's a perfect pairing. What a great build. We're talking about 13-man rosters. We're talking about 550 players in the NBA, but realistically 200 players who make noise in standard leagues. The amount of permutations and combinations that can be made with those players is huge. There is not a one perfect answer. Because if there was, that means you know how everything is playing out at every point. And yeah, at the end of the season, we can go back and look at it and go, this would have been the perfect pairing. But you can't do it now. It's impossible. So don't waste your energy on doing it. I'm going to come back and talk about more of some of this draft strategy stuff. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks or properties, investments. When you know that full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table, and that's why there is Monarch Money, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you, so you can link all of your accounts in minutes. You can see the clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. But why would you want to avoid spreadsheets? Spreadsheets are cool, man. That's what all the cool kids do. So don't let financial opportunities slip through your cracks. Slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That is 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA. Okay, we coming back here, of course, to talk about the tips to win. We're talking about draft strategy, ideas, and ways that we prep for fantasy drafts at the moment. Variance is something that I'm going to be leaning into more this season. We're going to be doing some work on this on Basketball Monster. I'm not sure how robust the variance we're going to produce is, but it is important to know what varies year on year, what varies day on day. When we're trying to project stuff, is it, we can say, well, he's a great shooter. Is he? Or is it up and down? We don't really know what we're going to get, so be cautious about banking on it. If you don't factor in variance, you're going to get kicked. Where you get kicked is up to you. It might be on the tip of your finger because you've paid some attention to it. Or otherwise, it might be straight in the jats. Like, you might be in real strife because you have said, well, he is a guy that shot 57% and hit 4 threes a game, and I know that I'm getting that, but you don't because of variance. It is a massive thing, and the way that we play fantasy, 95% of us play a weekly contest fantasy game. Not you roto guys. If you're playing categories or points, you are playing a week. 1/25th of a season. Over 25 weeks, stuff smooths, averages out. In a 1 week situation, very different. My player, 1 week, might have 3 games and get 2 steals, 2 steals, and 2 steals. Great. That's unbelievably good. Wow, I'm cooking. The next week, they might play 4 games and have 0, 0, 0, and 0. Meaning over a 2-week period, they average 0.8 steals. In 1 week, they were unbelievably good. The other week, they were terrible. So are they a good steals player or a bad steals player? Or is it just a variance situation that we need to be aware of when we're planning for a week and in the drafts? I'm going to do shows that are must draft shows and do not draft shows, and they're going to be misleading and full of garbage because these things do not exist. Joel Embiid is a do not draft in round 1, and for me, he's a do not draft in round 2 and round 3 and round 4. If he was in the 70s, I'd probably consider him. But that doesn't mean that I'm never drafting him. I think that at the moment, again, players that I think were overrated last season, Denny Avdia, Josh Giddey, I think that they're underrated at the moment. Doesn't mean you have to draft them. You don't have to go early to get them. Now, I have on some of my mock drafts to show you what I feel about them. Express that love. But You don't have to get them. The beauty of the NBA and the beauty of fantasy leagues and all these players that we have is there are alternate paths to doing things. Even at pick 1. You might say it's obviously Jokic. I go, okay, if you're playing Yahoo default, he's got a 2-game week in the final, so maybe he's not the player there. So maybe he's not must draft at number 1. Maybe it's Wemby. Maybe it's Shea, but if you're playing my recommended playoff, Shea goes 3-3-3 in the playoffs. Is that good enough? Don't know. Not must draft. Just got to know injuries as well. Who's entering the season injured? Max Strus is out for 4 months now. So with Darius Garland also out, you're going to have a lot of DeAndre Hunter, bit more Sam Merrill, a big boost for these guys. Jaren Jackson, Zach Edey are out to start the season. Joel Embiid and Paul George are out to start the season. You have to know these things. You have to know how serious it is and how much you can avoid or can't avoid. When you're in the season, one of the things to look at is what is your injured situation. Injured list, IL plus, also called injured reserve. What do you have? I believe you should have minimum 3. There is 0, 0, 0, 0. Fight me. I'll headbutt you right in the nipple if you want to argue with me. Having no injured spots or only 1 makes your league worse. Oh, but it actually makes the waiver wire a little bit more interesting. There's a lot more activity. Bullshit, makes it worse. Makes it worse. 3 is what you should have. I don't have any issue with having IL plus. Again, I don't want extra factors added into my league where I'm waiting on an external person to decide when a player moves from game time decision day to day to IL so I can slot them there. And if he moves too slow, I'm at a disadvantage to my opponent whose player moved 1 day early or whatever reason. It's just IL plus. And you go, well, there's an exploit on that. You can go ahead days in advance and adjust your thing. Yeah, you can. But then that also limits what you can do in terms of pickups and streaming. And the advantage you get from that is incredibly overblown. It's really not there. You just need to have these slots. But you also have to understand if you don't have them, how do you adjust what you do? You can't hold on to guys that are hurt because you end up at 6-7 game disadvantages per week and you're just going to lose. Well, I'm holding on to a top 20 guy, but when he comes back, but you're going to be so far behind it doesn't matter. So all of these little tweaks, it's why this game is so interesting. Every little adjustment that your league has, no injured slots, 3 IL plus slots, it adjusts the value of every single player and it adjusts the strategy every single week. So you got to know what they are. You got to know what your league does. You've got to know what your waiver process is. Do you have a season-long limit for waiver claims you can make? You shouldn't, but you might. Do you have a weekly limit on how many waiver claims you should have? You should, sort of. There needs to be some mechanism in place of a limit per week, whether that is waiver acquisitions or a games cap for maximum games played per week. You don't need both, but you definitely need one, and you can't have neither. But you need to know what the rule is. If you've only got 2 waiver moves per week, you need to be very cautious about how you're approaching schedule and injured players. Because when you get into a deficit, you cannot catch up. If you are in a situation where you've got 7 moves in a week, well, you've got to expand the level of replaceability of your roster. Instead of your worst player being replaceable, your worst 3 players are replaceable to get more games in. Trades. The longer your league is established, the more experienced the players in your league are. As a general rule, the fewer trades there will be. Remember this. When you are trading, when you are making trades, there is a risk that you make your team worse. A trade can be win-win. It can be win-loss. It can be loss-loss. Both teams can get worse in trades. My general rule on a trade, and I know people are going to argue on this, so again, let me be very clear, the words should be very clear here. My general take on a trade is, if I am offered a trade, my internal monologue is to reject the trade. That doesn't mean I hit reject. That doesn't mean I respond back and say no. Right? Because I've said this in the past and people go, how can you just reject the trade straight away? Absolutely not what I'm saying. My immediate response to receiving a trade is I'm not doing this trade before I even open the trade. So I am sitting at a position of no, convince me. I'm not doing it, convince me. Now, I'm not saying that the trade partner needs to convince me. I need to convince me. And then I look at it. Like, okay, is this giving me irrefutable value? Is there maybe this goes wrong? Then I'm not going to do it. What's the point? Especially if my team is sitting pretty. If I'm in first place and there's a trade that's a 50-50, why would I do it? There's no reason to do it. Don't be trade happy because you think you're a fake GM. Go buy NBA 2K and play and do trades on that. You don't have to do trades. You can do trades. Successful trades are very useful. But don't think you just have to do them. Find a trade that you believe, you won't be right every time, but find a trade that you believe is a no-brainer. Where you look at it from as many angles as you can and you see 8 wins and 1 loss. Go up, I'm very happy with that probability of that benefiting me. If you look at it and go, yeah, I don't know, maybe. Before. Especially if you're happy with how your team looks. Because like with all of this stuff, any trade that you make is an adjustment. Unless you're trading one player with one set of stats for a player with the exact same set of stats, which again, why would you do it? But unless you're doing that, then the overall structure of your team is different. You might have traded a guy at 50% field goals for a guy at 44. So what does that mean now? Is now field goal percentage a battle for you each week? Has it now secured you in 3-pointers though? Is that worth it? Don't just go, yeah, it's a trade. I think this player's fine, this player's fine. Also, you don't know if a trade's going to be good as a general rule. You want to improve your chances of not getting it wrong. That's the nuance, I think, around that sort of thing. Got some more stuff to talk about, but we do have something happening over on the Locked On Podcast Network at the moment. We want to hear from you. We've put together a survey so we can learn more about you guys and we can make your favorite shows even better. It's a chance for you to tell us what you like and what you don't and answer the questions about our advertising as well. So go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that is lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. You can also find that link in the show notes. Thanks a lot for helping us out. Go. All right, let's go through a few more of these guaranteed ways to win your fantasy league. All right, some strategies. I want to briefly cover some of these things here because I think there is a level of importance in this. You're going to hear about handcuffing, and it's a big thing in fantasy football drafts. It's not really as big of a thing in fantasy basketball drafts. When can you do it? Or when is it more likely to do? In a weekly changes league, where your bench is actually a bench. In your league where you've got more than a 10-3 or a 10-4 starter versus bench split, sure. Or if you've got a weekly games cap. Because if you run a standard league with 10 starters and 3 or 4 bench players, over the course of a week, nobody is a bench player. You will need to use all 13 or 14 of those spots. They are all active players. And if you've got somebody's backup playing 16 minutes a night, you are giving yourself a disservice because you're sitting there waiting for somebody to get injured for that guy to step up while you're getting downtrodden each week by carrying a 0 on your roster basically, or a not useful player. But if you play in a weekly league, the bench is the bench. If you play in a deeper league, you don't have to use all those slots. If you're playing games cap, you don't have to use all of those slots. So what is handcuffing? It's grabbing somebody who is a backup for your starter or even someone else's. Let's just use Joel Embiid. If you draft Joel Embiid, again, be very cautious when you do that. You might think Andre Drummond's the backup. Maybe he is. Or maybe it's a Dem Boner. So should you grab a Dem Boner in round 11? Again, you will have to use a Dem Boner every game that he plays in this position. But you can also handcuff someone else's starter. If one of your rivals grabs Embiid, you can grab Boner in round 12. And then when Embiid's not playing, then you've got the advantage. But again, remember that player in a standard setting, you've got to use them like a regular guy and it will be to your detriment. So it only works in certain situations. You might hear the term stacking. It works in fantasy football. Put the receiver and the quarterback together because when the quarterback throws it for a touchdown, He gets the yards, he gets the touchdown, the receiver gets the yards, the receiver gets the touchdown. It's synergistic. It's not a thing in fantasy. Stacking Jaylen Brown and Derek White doesn't mean anything. It gives you no benefit. There's no synergism in these players. Well, I'm going to draft Ja Morant and I'm going to draft Zach Edey because every time Morant gets an assist on a pick and roll, Edey's finishing it. Who cares? It's not a thing. Do not fall into the fantasy football strategy of thinking that is a real situation, because it's not. It's not something to look at. Punting is another strategy. It's not relevant in points leagues. You can't punt in points leagues. Don't worry about it. It's a major strategy for head-to-head category leagues, and we are going to do more and more shows specifically on punting, so we're not going to cover it much here. It can work in roto leagues, but it's usually not the best way to approach it. Team spread is another thing, and what do I mean by team spread? It's not a term I've ever used before, so there you go, new term, but it's, people often ask the question, how many players from each team is too many? The general rule is, okay, not like there's no set number. If you've got 3 players from one team, cool. Whatever. The problem you have, though, is if you go to 4 or 5, is that when those players all play on a high volume day, you're going to be putting yourself into more of a situation where you're going to have too many players and guys sitting on the bench. I think 3 is a totally fine number to have from one individual team. Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, and Yeka Okongwu. Absolutely no problem with having those 3 guys. If I add Porzingis in there and then grab Ricochet, okay, they're all picked at different spots in the draft, but now, like, if the Hawks are playing on a Wednesday, I know that I've got 5 guys playing, but they're all playing on that one day. Or they've got a bad schedule week, a 2-game week, which they don't, but like, say it's the Nuggets, and I've got Jokic, and I've got Cam Johnson, I've got Murray. I added Peyton Watson for whatever reason, because I'm stupid. Like, that's a problem. So I think it's not a hard number, but 3 is probably as far as, it's 3 safe. And then, what do you do with bad and great teams? Because when you get to the fantasy playoffs, bad teams are going to sit players, and when you get to the fantasy playoffs, great teams, Cleveland, Oklahoma City from last season, Boston in previous seasons, they will reduce the minutes and they will sit guys down. How aggressive should you be on avoiding those guys? Well, as with everything, which is what I love about this, it's all individual and it's all nuanced, isn't it? Like, you're not avoiding Shea because of this, but you have to understand that, like in Cleveland, they're going to limit some of the minutes. I think it's more important to avoid an excessive amount of bad teams, but also, nobody in their right mind thought that Philadelphia was a bad team last season. Nobody. Never occurred to anybody that would be a problem. And there'll be another one of those that happen. This season, there might be 2 of them. A bad team, probably not Washington, definitely not Brooklyn, probably not Utah. One of them might become good. But yeah, random stuff happens. Don't think you know it all. Don't think you know how this stuff is going to play out, and therefore I am never drafting from a tanking team. Because, you don't want to take Walker Kessler in round 2, because I do think Utah will be bad, but if he's in round 5 or 6 and then we get shenanigans in March, I'll drop him. I don't really have that much of an issue, because you're going to see weird things happen. You're going to see Drew Timme putting up numbers, or someone like that when it gets to March. And replacements will appear. A lot. So get some value out of guys. Don't be hesitant. You don't want to stack your team with 6 Hornets players. Or like, I've got 6 players. It's from Washington, Charlotte, Brooklyn, and Utah, half my roster. That's not a good idea. As with nearly all of this stuff, it's about balance. You've got to make adjustments in leagues. How does things differ in the early versus the late season? If you draft, say, Yegor Yeoman, rookie point guard, presumably starting for the Brooklyn Nets, let me guarantee you this, he's going to suck. Like, he is going to be bad early on. He might suck all year. He honestly, Yeoman might suck his entire career. I don't know that. You don't know that. But early season, if I draft Yeoman in round 12, let's see what happens. I'll give him 3 weeks. My usual rule on rookies is let's give them until Thanksgiving. And is there any sign of change? Are the minutes pushing up? Is the shooting looking better? Is their responsibility increasing? Do they look overwhelmed or do they look fine? And then at Thanksgiving, I'll turf them or I'll hold them. And if they're bad for 4 weeks, I can deal with that. I can't deal with 4 players doing that, but I can deal with one of them. Because I've got, let's say, 16 more weeks at least left. If I'm in round or week 17, it's the All-Star break, and I add someone off the waiver wire, I think he might get a chance in March. I don't have that time to wait. If it doesn't happen in the next 2 or 3 days and I'm fighting for a playoff spot, I can't wait on that. You got to move on. Your tolerance for an injured player early in the season should be larger. If you've got 4 weeks left in the season and someone's out for 2 weeks, you can't hold someone who's out for, realistically, half of the season. If they're out for 2 weeks on November the 2nd, who cares? It doesn't matter. It's less important. And the same thing goes for where you are in the standings. If I'm at the top of the standings and I have a 10-game buffer on the team that's third, you know what I can do? I can grab an injured guy off the waiver wire. I can sit on my third best player who's out for 2 weeks. And if I cop zeros and lose this week, it does not matter. It's totally okay. Who cares if I'm the 1 seed or the 2 seed, or if I'm 3 versus 4? I've got someone who is good who will come back. If I'm 7th and top 6 make playoffs and my 4th best player is out for 3 weeks and I've already got my best player in injured reserve, I have to cut that player because I cannot get players and games in with this guy sitting injured. And yeah, it's frustrating that you have to cut someone good. It's why I want more injured slots. But if I was in first, I just cop it. I don't know. I lost this week. Who cares? I'm building for the next week. But if every week becomes do or die, your decision making needs to change on all of that. And that is a bunch of tips to win. Like I said, there's a bunch of psychology stuff that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to do a bunch of stuff specifically for snake drafts and auction drafts and roto drafts coming up as well. But I think that was enough basic stuff. Now, you may have hated that show. Shout out to you. Good for you. That's okay. You may have heard it all before. You may disagree with some of that stuff. That's okay as well. But I think that it is useful to just bring some of that stuff back to our attention. Some core concepts that will be referred to from now through to the 12th of April when the NBA regular season finishes. Hit the thumb on the video, guys. That will be immense, fantastic, superb, and we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.